Let's customize our Vagrant file to describe a server that we can use to test our profile's REST API. Alright, so we have this template Vagrant file here, and this provides a template for a very basic Vagrant box. So it just uses the default box that whatever's set on the system, and it just creates a simple Vagrant box with no customizations whatsoever. We're going to customize this and make some changes so it's more suitable for our API. In the resources of this video, I provided a link to a pre-made Vagrant file that I made for this course. What I want you to do is head over to that link and copy the full contents of that file. And then we're going to go back to our Vagrant file and we're going to replace the contents of the Vagrant file with my custom file. This is a basic template file that I use for Django projects. So I always keep this file saved somewhere, and then whenever I want to create a new Django project, I just use this as a template and I tweak it as I need if I need to make any changes to it. Once you paste the contents of the file in, you can save the file. Now I'm going to walk through each line of this Vagrant file and I'm going to explain what it does. So this first thing here is just basically opening up the config for our file. So any Vagrant file has to be wrapped in this vagrant.configure. And then within the parameter of configure here, you provide the API version of Vagrant that you want to use. API version 2 is the latest version that Vagrant uses, so we're going to use that. These lines here that are prefixed by the hash symbol are just comments. So they're just for informational purposes. You don't need to worry about them. They don't actually run when we create our server. The first line here is config.vm.box. Now what this line does is it tells Vagrant what image we want to use to base our Vagrant server on. We're using the Ubuntu Xennial 64 image. This is the latest version of Ubuntu at the time of making this video. The reason I'm using this image is because this is the image that I use when I deploy my applications to a real production server. So as I'm developing my applications, I can be building it on a server that is actually going to be used in the real world. So I'm not developing on one version of an operating system and then trying to deploy it to another and then running into all of these issues down the line because of incompatibility. I know that anything I create will run on an Ubuntu Xennial server. The next line here, line 17, is a network configuration. What this does is it forwards the port 8080 on the guest operating system to port 8080 on the host. So when we create a Vagrant box, we're creating a guest operating system on our host. So our laptop or our desktop is the host system. And that's going to host a guest image. So it's going to host a guest operating system, which is going to run our application. While we're developing our application, we want to be able to connect to this guest operating system. The way we do that is we forward the port 8080 on the guest to our local host 8080. That way, we can access any server that's running on port 8080 by going to our local host IP address, which is this IP address here, 127.0.0.1. So once we run our application in a web server on our Vagrant box, we'll run it on port 8080, and then we can test our application by going to 127.0.0.1 on port 8080. It might be a little bit confusing, but don't worry, as I show you it in action, it will make more sense. This next block of code here is the provisioning script. This is a script that runs on the server the first time you start it. So when we first create our server, it's going to run all of these commands, and what these are going to do is it's going to set up our server to be able to support our application. So that means every time we create a new server, we don't need to manually run all of these commands. They'll be ran automatically. All this bash script does is it updates the packages on the server to the latest version. It sets the locale to get rid of an irritating Ubuntu error. And then it installs the Python 3 dev package, SQLite, which is the database we'll use, and the Python pip package manager. These are all applications that we're going to use in the course as we're developing our API. This confusing block of code here configures a tool called Virtualenvwrapper. Later on in the course, I'm going to show you a tool called Virtual Environments. The Virtualenvwrapper is a tool that gives us some shortcut commands that make it easier when working with virtual environments. You'll understand as we get to the later lessons and I show you it in action. Okay, so that's how you customize the Vagrant Box to work with our application. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.